after months of doing work and things around home, we finally get a break. And so we're taking a very much needed trip to check on the cabin in Wyoming and
The Mojave Desert.
to get a little bit of that wonderful sunshine down there. Our first stop will be our daughter Annette's vacation home in Central Oregon. We'll go there and check on things and winterize the place since winter will soon be coming upon us. The next morning, we're up early and ready to continue on our trip, heading east. From the lush and still green alfalfa and mint fields of southeast Oregon on to the desert at Whitehorse Hot Springs. We budgeted enough time to spend the night at this hot springs, which is very, very nice. And it's full moon now, so we're going to cram as much into this trip as we possibly can. There's a hot pool with the volcanic gases escaping, and hot water and volcanic gases come gurgling up from the bottom of the pool at Whitehorse Hot Springs. We set up our little backpack tent for the night, and then it's time to try the hot springs. The hot springs is super nice. It's one of our favorites, but we won't have time to spend much time in it because it's full moon, and we want to go up on top of the little mountain behind the hot springs and watch the beavers. Our camp is right below a little mountain, and the beavers have made an extra big pond and even flooded part of the camping area. But it's great habitat for all sorts of birds, beavers, and all sorts of other wildlife. We only saw one beaver, but full of the moon, they'll be out pretty soon, and a few ducks circle around and check it out before they land on the beaver pond for the night. That full moon graces the desert sky as it shines upon Whitehorse Hot Springs. How fortunate we are to have hit it right at full moon. This is always a magical spot at full of the moon. The next morning, we have our simple camp packed up before daylight, and we're underway with the Steens Mountains lit up by a full moon as it slowly sinks behind the top of the Steens Mountains. Marge has taken a few pictures of it, and then we'll move on. I don't know about the world, but it looks like Marge thinks she's got the moon in the palm of her hand. The moon is slowly sinking behind the Steens Mountain on the west, and on the east the sun is beginning to come up. We go through Nesa, Idaho on our journey through Idaho. This is kind of a special place. Our grandparents and several of our relatives lived on a ranch just outside Nesa, just east of Nesa, toward the sand dunes. So we have to take time to get a few pictures of Nesa. Then across the Snake River into the fertile Snake River Valley with all its farming as we chart a course eastward. There are many sugar beets grown here and all sorts of other agricultural products including acres and acres of orchards and acres of grapes to make wine to grace the tables of the world. From the Snake River Valley, we start climbing out of the valley into Idaho's central desert as the trees are all painted with their greatest of autumn colors. Mother Nature has decorated the desert wherever there's a little moisture with its finest of autumn colors as we chart a course toward Craters of the Moon National Park. Right on the edge of Craters of the Moon National Park, we make our first hot spring stop since Whitehorse, and we're going down to Horse Trader Hot Springs. It's an all too short a path from the highway down to the hot springs, but as long as there's no one here, this is an absolutely excellent hot springs. The water comes right out of the ground, the hot water, into a pool that's so clear there's not a speck in it, and we can see the hot water gurgling up, and then it can be mixed with cold. Some of the town toughies were here, it looks like, the night before, and had 'em a little beer party. An old cow and a calf moved by, and then another calf, and the other calf's mother was bellering for him in the far Sonia. We never budgeted near enough time for the hot springs, but it's time to be moving on. Next to Arco, Idaho, and the graduating classes had been putting the year they graduated on the cliffs behind Arco, Idaho, and they've been doing this since 1920. So all the years are up there from 1920 till about 2010, when the environmentalists stopped them from doing this. They said they were destroying some of the algae that grew on the rocks, so it is no longer done to this day. I really enjoy seeing this place. It's a one-of-the-world type of spot, and it's too bad they can no longer do it, but I guess it is a little bit dangerous. In the years since they've been doing this, there has not been one person injured in the painting the rocks. From there, we move on in to far eastern Idaho as we go along Palisades Reservoir on the Snake River, and it is painted with its finest fall colors. As we move on, and shortly we'll be in Wyoming. Again, it looks as though we are here at just the right time to see the Quaking aspen display their finest of fall colors along Palisades Reservoir. We're not going to make it to the cabin before dark, but when we do make it to the cabin, we find that everything is in good shape. The fish sculptures were done by Kent, and I did the taxidermy work on the fish and the animals all around the cabin.
And all sorts of other stuff hanging on the beam, and my spring buck, and my hat and coat hanger that Kent made, a metal sculpture again, and an antelope that I did, and then some antique cooking items and things above the cupboards, and all the cupboards.
Well, let me clean
the canoe, and this kettle is to heat our water since we don't have a well yet. chimney made of fossil fish we bought down at Kimmer at a quarry and dug ourselves. All sorts of fish. And another set of deer antlers that Bob Christer and I got. And a whole bunch more fish fossils on a whole wall by the stairway. Frying skillet that Net got me, and I don't remember where that Dutch oven came from.
Oh, it was a set. It came with it.
Oh.
We have a full basement under the cabin just for extra bunks and storage. There's room for several brave hunters and fishermen to sleep in the basement, even though we haven't got it finished yet. On the main floor, we made a bathroom with a shower enclosure, glass sliding doors over it, and then we hoist a bucket of water we've heated on the wood stove up, and it has a shower head on it, so you can take you a nice clean shower. We have an attic upstairs, and usually Marge and I sleep up there. It too isn't finished, but maybe next summer we can get time to come over and do some finishing on the cabin. It would sure be nice. But it works good as a bedroom even though it's not finished. Marge and I usually sleep up there, and it's a very comfortable bed, and we can peek out the window and watch the antelope. Since this is our first trip to the cabin this year, the lawn is a mess, but that won't. Every pass across this bunch grass with the lawnmower cuts it down and makes it look more presentable. The thing I'm worried about is this grass catching on fire, so it has to be mowed. Marge even has a little cactus garden in front of the cabin, and so I'll take care of that while I'm mowing. The weed eater will help with that too. The cactus are all the native prickly pear, but when they bloom, it's a display of colors, second to none. And then, of course, we have the resident badger. You better be careful where he digs these holes, though. He's pretty close to that concrete porch support. He just kinda took over, and I think he was still living in the holes. After I mowed the lawn, the next morning I looked where I'd caused a little bit of dirt to fall in his hole, and it looks like he angrily went out and cleaned the hole. Since he's living here now, I won't bother to to shovel the dirt back in the holes. I'll do it next year when he's not around, before somebody breaks a leg in one of them. It's now getting time to leave our little house on the prairie to head on south. Again, we'll get a good early start as we pull away from the cabin and head toward Utah. The sun is just beginning to rise over the Wind River mountain range, and a few antelope are beginning to start their grazing for the day as an old buck looks on. The antelope numbers are very low this year, and I don't know what the reason for it is. Maybe they had a bad winter kill and it'll take them a while to come back. Sort of the cycle of big game. It'll be up and down, but I hope it hurries up and comes back. Then down by Cottonwood Creek, where my grandpa and my great-grandpa homesteaded on the high plateau of the Wyoming, right under the shelter of the Wyoming Range. Then through Marbleton and Big Piney, Wyoming, where many of our family homesteaded and lived and even went to school in Big Piney and Marbleton. Not much left here in this windswept ice box of the nation, as it once called itself. There are plenty of saloons here to warm the inside of your stomach, and not a whole lot else. Past the Big Piney sign and on south we head. We will follow near the Green River most of the rest of the way through Wyoming. We come to one of the first crossings of the Green River, all decorated with its fall colors, and this is the spot where the trapper Jim Bridger carved his name into the soft sandstone of the cliffs. And many other people throughout the ages have done this. They call it Names Hill. We move right on through southern Wyoming into northern Utah, where we'll go right through the outskirts of Salt Lake City and then head west along the Great Salt Lake itself and see the many, many salt factories where they mine the salt, and huge mountains of stockpiled salt are stacked along the road as we move west along the Great Salt Lake. Our tiny gasoline motor pushes us right beyond the sign of the Bonneville Speed Track, where many a speed record has been broken. Then we find a spot to camp in the mountains of Nevada. This is a super good place to camp, right amongst the pinyon pine and the juniper trees, as the sun slowly sets behind the Nevada horizons. I found a few of the pinyon pine cones laying around the campsite, and I see some of them still have nuts in them. So I'm going over and see if I can find some nuts. And I found an entire handful of these delicious little pine nuts right in the first cone I opened. These nuts were a great food source for the Native Americans and the early homesteaders as well. The next morning, as the sun peaks over the horizon, we're underway again, past the grasshopper oil pumps as it's slowly bringing that bubbling crude up from far below the surface of the earth on the Nevada desert. It's up and down hills through the mountains of Nevada as we head westward. We find a herd of wild horses in the hills not too far out of Bishop, California. There's even a little colt and a yearling with the herd of horses as they move from one feeding area to the next, and then they have to find their water. But they can travel 20 miles to water from their feeding if they have to. They're a traveler of the desert. Into California, we'll stop at Bishop, and from now on,
Get
we'll
gas
jiggle
and
our
the
way
supplies
for
we need.
many, many miles. We'll eat plenty of dust, but that's good. That'll keep the people that don't belong there away. There's still a few of the old head rigs still standing, which were used to bring the gold up from away down deep in the earth, and then it would sort it, and hopefully you could find some nuggets. There's even a place where they had a mine in the mountain, but unfortunately there was just too much rock and dirt mixed with the gold, so the place didn't live too terribly long. The desert winds, sunshine, and rains have taken a toll on this place, and it won't be standing too much longer. An old 1960-something Chevy pickup sits dead along the road. We go out of Marble Canyon, climb up through another pinyon forest, where we'll soon go over the summit and drop down into the road straightens out ahead of us and points toward the Salt Lake of the sand dunes down here. As we're nearing the valley floor, we see a strange sight ahead of us. It's an airplane being hauled out of the valley on a trailer. He went to land at the dirt street.